Welcome to my channel. Enjoy this video and subscribe my channel. After watching the latest episode of 90 Day Fiance Season 11, I'm more convinced than ever that Juan Daza is looking for a way out of his relationship with Jessica Parsons. Juan and Jessica met on a cruise ship, where Juan worked as a bartender. At the time, Jessica's first marriage was ending, and she was smitten with Juan. The two began a long-distance relationship, with Jessica based in Wyoming and Juan in Cali, Colombia. 90 Day Fiancé's Jessica and Juan got engaged, and Jessica became pregnant with Juan's child. The family reunited on 90 Day Fiancé after Juan was granted his K-1 visa and moved to Wyoming. However, the reunion was not all they dreamed. The couple lacked privacy, living in a small house with their son as well as Jessica's two sons from her first marriage. Juan was dismayed to find that their bedroom didn't even have a door. Furthermore, old issues resurfaced when Jessica's best friend brought up Juan's past infidelity. Juan found it hard to adapt to life in America, and he faced a growing urge to return to his carefree life at sea. As Juan struggled to adjust to his role as a stay-at-home father of three in a small town, he admitted to producers that he was toying with the idea of going back to work. Juan never officially left his job as a cruise ship bartender, and his boss had been reaching out to offer him work. Juan knew Jessica wouldn't be happy with the idea of him leaving, so he kept his dilemma a secret from her. Juan's lack of communication with both Jessica and his employer is a major red flag. He avoided telling Jessica something that would completely change their future, even as they were in the middle of wedding planning, and he was finally spending time with his son. Even worse, Juan's failure to resign from his job in the first place makes me think this was likely his plan all along. While Jessica was under the impression Juan was finally there to stay, he always had one foot out the door. When Juan finally worked up the courage to tell Jessica about his plans, she reacted exactly as he'd expected. Jessica refused to entertain the idea of Juan leaving again for months at a time. She told him that if he wanted to keep being a bartender on ships, he might as well go back to his family in Colombia, because she wasn't interested in bringing a man into her son's lives who wasn't there to stay. Jessica is obviously completely unwavering in her stance on Juan's job. I suspect this was a conversation they'd had many times, with Juan already aware of how strongly she felt about it. Yet he seemed hesitant to close the door on his fun, carefree life. This is a sign of Juan's larger commitment issues. It goes far beyond his desire to earn a living for his family and instead speaks to his unwillingness to settle down and give up his single life once and for all. Regardless of how Jessica feels, Juan returning to work on cruise ships could spell disaster for his K-1 visa process. Ships operate in international waters, which means Juan would have to leave the United States if he were to return to work. Reddit user u/TalkingMotanka, a former cruise ship employee, explained the complexities of the workforce. They noted that if Juan leaves the US before his green card is approved, he risks going against the terms of his K-1 visa application. Juan is obviously experienced with these matters, having worked on cruise ships in the past and navigated the K-1 visa application process. He surely knows the legal complications involved with leaving the country to work in international waters. Juan's urgency to go back to work, coupled with his apparent dissatisfaction with life in Wyoming, leads me to suspect that he may be intentionally violating the terms of the K-1 as part of a larger fear of commitment. Juan's desire to resume working on a cruise ship, even without Jessica's approval, is evidence of his restlessness and unhappiness with his current living situation. He's willing to consider leaving behind his fiancée and their young child for another chance to live out his dreams. The fact that Juan would even toy with the idea of being away from his family instead of looking for work closer to home is concerning. That it could also put an end to his future in the US is even more troubling. Juan's life turned upside down when he moved to Wyoming, and it's natural that he would long for the simplicity he once had. But his many red flags on 90 Day Fiancé add up to suggest Juan's looking for any possible way to get out of his current situation. Juan has a history of infidelity, and he quickly dismissed the possibility of establishing a career in Wyoming. Juan doesn't seem ready to commit to Jessica, and his flirtation with the idea of leaving her behind for a life at sea tells me he's nowhere near ready to settle down.